Well, welcome back to the podcast, Conversations with Jeff Bucknam. Dr. Jeff Bucknam is the lead teaching pastor at Harvest Bible Chapel, and I am your host, Tommy Creutz, and we are going to have a conversation today. Today is actually special, Jeff.
Isn't every day is special?
Every day is special, but maybe this day is different.
Okay.
And
different special,
because today is the season 1 finale. We made it.
It is?
It is.
That's great, yeah.
Shocking.
I know.
We've made it through 1 season of podcasts.
I know.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's great.
We are a thing now.
Yeah.
We're a thing.
What kind of thing, we're not sure yet.
Not sure.
But we are a thing. We don't have swag yet.
No.
For the podcast with that has my name in it. And this is weird.
Yeah.
For Harvest Bible Chapel to not have swag because you again today are wearing another Harvest swag.
Yes.
Do you own anything I'm sure I've asked you this before, because every time you come into this room, you're always wearing something that you got from Harvest.
Yes, I do own other clothing.
But you don't wear? Do you feel like when you come here, you have to kind of represent the church?
Yeah, of course.
Like it's
Instead of wearing like a name tag, right, I just wear a shirt.
It's like a uniform.
It's like a uniform, right, exactly.
Like Syntas or whatever that is.
Well, I've just kind of made it a thing now on Tuesdays when we do our podcast. I just have to make sure that I wear a different piece of Harvest gear, and we'll just see how long it goes.
Yeah, that's good.
How many do I have?
That's okay. I'll let you know when you repeat one.
Perfect. I did the first 3 podcasts, I think.
Yeah, you wore the same
So
shirt.
Forgive me, please. Those who are listening have no idea what we're talking about, but those watching on YouTube do. And so make sure you subscribe and like. Oh, maybe if you want to. We enjoy you watching us and our facial expressions as we talk to each other. And wow, so when this comes out, it'll be right after Christmas.
Okay.
And so what is the best Christmas gift that you've ever received? And what is the worst Christmas gift that you've ever received?
The best Christmas gift I ever received was the Lord Jesus Christ.
Wow. That is such a good answer.
Second to him.
Second to him.
1 year, I received a car. Yeah. So I shared when I first turned 16, so I shared a car with my sister, which of course didn't go well.
Yeah.
And then that Christmas, my parents went and bought this. It was not the greatest car, but it was a white 1985 Mazda 626.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was a stick shift.
Yes.
And I did not know how to do that yet.
Yep.
But it was a stick shift white. But they sent me on this weird hunt for it.
Okay.
Like the gift came in a sock.
Yes.
Inside several boxes.
Those are the best.
And then I got
gifts.
inside, and this sock, and inside the sock was a key.
Yeah. Like a car key? Or
a car key.
Okay.
And I was like, what? And they said, well, you're going to have to walk around the neighborhood and find out. So
in 1985, probably didn't have did they have the electronic?
No.
Yeah, so you just had to try to.
So I was going around the neighborhood into people's like driveways and trying out the key on their car. And some of them were sitting inside their having their Christmas in their pajamas, and they would see me walk up, look in the window, and try my key on their car.
That's unbelievable.
It was very funny.
Where was
eventually, it? It was down the end of we lived on a cul-de-sac at the end of the cul-de-sac in these other people's house. But I had walked around the block several times to try to find it. So I tried that key on good 15, 20 cars.
Wow.
Yeah. At the end, my parents were like, oh, maybe it's closer to our house, Jeff.
Yes.
Wouldn't you think we would make it closer to that? Because I kept walking further away.
Oh, my goodness.
So that was great.
That's
right?
a great Christmas gift.
It's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Worst Christmas gift.
Worst.
1 year, my sister gave me a potted plant.
Real or fake?
No, it was a real one.
Okay.
It's an awful Christmas gift because number one, I'm a boy.
Yeah.
And number two, she knew that thing was dead in a week.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like who's gonna take care of the plant? And I think I was like 17. It Who gives a 17-year-old a potted plant?
Do you think it was one of those things where when someone forgets to get you a gift,
I think totally.
You stop at Jewel Osco,
and she was like, "What do I get? What do I get? Oh, a
plant,
potted plant for my 17-year-old brother. He'll love it."
Yes.
Jeez.
Is she older or younger than you?
Older, 6 years older.
Well, we'll get into that.
I think she was
later.
sort of like trying to troll me at that point, though.
Yes.
Like, you're hard to buy for, so
here's a plant.
Here's a potted plant, and it was dead. Like I never watered it.
Did it make it to New Year's?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, it might have made it just past New Year's, but it was dead. It was well and truly dead in January.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Speaking of New Year's, a lot of people are taking this week to look forward to New Year's. We had some thoughts about New Year's on an earlier podcast, but what do you think about
the thought that it's a useless holiday?
Yes, that thought, and how thinking that
you're not allowed to gather for it now.
That's
because of COVID. COVID knows it's New Year's, and it comes out of its shell and attacks.
It does. I've heard that. The experts.
It parties too, man.
It parties too. and so what do you think about New Year's resolutions?
Oh yeah.
What do you think about those?
Well, I don't really make them.
You don't?
No, I don't.
Never? Or
I used to.
Okay.
Years ago, I used to make New Year's resolutions, but the only reason I made them was because it kind of felt like you were supposed to.
Right.
And then I realized how consistently I failed at all those New Year's resolutions that it got to the point where you're like, you know what, I don't think I want to put myself in the position to be let down by myself again.
Yeah, it just starts hurting more and more. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So sometimes what I'll do, though, is I might do the same thing as a New Year's resolution, but I'll do it before New Year's.
Right.
So then it doesn't feel like a New Year's resolution. It's like,
Take
no,
that.
I did this last year too.
Yeah, we don't like New Year's. We're not going to celebrate New Year's.
Totally. When I used to live in the West Coast, right? We used to always, at 9 o'clock, I'd watch the ball fall, in New York, and that was good enough for me.
That was it.
I was like, oh, we're done.
That's right. Yeah, because you guys would have been way behind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
9 p.m. was New
Year's.
Was New Year's enough anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you didn't even have to stay up till midnight.
Oh, never. No.
That's amazing.
No.
That's incredible. Well, we have a conversation today, and it's a special one because it is our season finale. And if you guys remember all the way back to our first episode, our first conversation was with me.
Yeah, it was with you.
And now the last conversation of season 1 is going to be with you. Wow.
Am I going to have to do like that schizophrenic interviewing myself?
No, yeah. So, Jeff, I'm going to interview you.
All right.
And I don't know, maybe we'll switch seats. Maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. But we're going to get into all of that after the break. So let's get into it. All right, welcome back. Here we are with Dr. Jeff Bucknam. We're going to be having a conversation with you because everyone has a story. And are you nervous?
No.
Perfect.
No.
You've mentioned a lot of like mini stories within your sermons and even when we kind of just talk amongst each other.
Yeah, they're all fake.
Well, we're going to get into that today.
Yeah.
We're going to find out what's real, what's not, and we're going to hear your whole story.
Yeah.
And so let's start at the beginning. Well, if you're watching, you've noticed that we have now switched chairs. And so
it's a very different view from over here.
it is. Yeah, it's so different.
Much more intimidating.
Yeah. I'm the boss now. And so you have to answer all of my questions.
Okay, where you go?
Here we go. You, take us all the way back
All
to
the way back.
child Dr. Jeff Bucky Buck.
Baby
Jeff. baby Jeff.
Yeah.
And so did you grow up in a Christian home? How was that?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, Christian in name, I would say.
But not in
But, like,
practice?
Well, kind of. Like cultural Christian.
Okay. Explain that a little bit. What is
cultural Christian means that you are you go to church because I was born in 1972.
Okay.
So when you're in the 70s in the Seattle area, I was born in Boston actually.
Okay.
And then when I was 2 years old, I moved to Seattle. My dad got a job at this. He was what's called a geotechnical engineer. It's kind of civil engineering, and so he got a job on the West Coast after having grown up and lived in the Boston area his whole life.
Wow.
My mom is Canadian. Hear what I did there, Mum? She was Canadian. She was from Prince Edward Island, which is where Anne of Green Gables was filmed. Do you know Anne of Green Gables?
I have heard of it.
You've not watched it?
No, I have not. Should I? This
Sherry's
Christmas?
in the room. She's seen Anne of Green Gables. Sherry said no.
Wow.
She's the only woman I've ever met who hasn't seen Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables is a Canadian institution. It is like Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote these books. And anyway, there's a movie you can watch, Anne of Green Gables, and there's a scene where Anne is running onto a beach. That's called Cavendish.
Okay.
That's where my parents met.
At that beach?
Yeah, my dad drove from Boston, Massachusetts, up to Canada, up to Prince Edward Island in the summer. And I asked him when I was younger, why? And he's like, well, we just had, like vacation and we just wanted to go somewhere. But come to find out, he was on the beach every day. He and like two of his buddies just looking for chicks.
Yeah.
That was all he did.
That's what
he drove to Canada to find a Canadian girl.
Wow.
And he found my mom.
Yes. So it worked.
On that beach.
That's crazy.
So then they got married like the next day. They got married. They got married, and then they moved to the States. They moved to Boston. My dad kept doing what he was doing. Actually, he was in Illinois doing his doctorate years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with my mom in Champaign-Urbana.
And what was he doing?
Is it Champaign-Urbana or just Champaign?
Yeah.
The University of Illinois.
Urbana? I've heard it. I've heard it both
University
ways.
of Illinois.
I've heard it both ways.
But yeah, he did his doctorate there, and then he moved back. He was teaching at a university there. He went to Tufts University, and then he was teaching there for a while, and I think he taught at a few other places.
And he was teaching civil engineering.
Yeah, bigwig stuff.
Wow.
And then he got invited to be a part of to basically, I think, kind of run a branch of a civil engineering firm in Washington State, in Seattle. So it's like all the way across the country.
Yes, literally.
And my dad had the courage to say, yeah, we'll give it a go.
Wow.
Hadn't been there, didn't know anything about it, but we went. And it's one of my first memories, actually, is flying. I know, isn't that weird? Like 2 years old. And I remember flying across the country in this massive airplane. And I remember because my sister was throwing up.
Okay.
That's like the first memory I have.
Is your
my
sister
throwing up on the aisle of the airplane.
Okay, and so how many siblings do you have?
I have two sisters.
Two sisters.
Yeah, one is 6 years older than I am.
Okay.
She lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin now.
It's a great place.
And with her husband, and he's actually the professor as well. She's a veterinarian.
Okay.
And my other sister, who's adopted. Actually, that's the weird thing. My parents didn't think they could have another child after my oldest sister, and so they adopted my next oldest sister a year before they had me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was like, surprise.
Surprise. It's me, a boy.
That's right. Deal with this.
Yes.
I was just waiting till you got all settled.
Yes.
And then I ruined it.
I'm ruining everything.
Yeah. Now, so two older sisters and me. And my next older sister and I are like 11 months apart.
Okay.
Yeah. So
they adopted her like pretty much as a baby.
And we fought all the time when we were kids.
Yes.
But I love her.
Yes.
She, so anyway, moved to Seattle. Mm-hmm. And that's what I remember growing up in the Seattle area. Yeah. The suburbs of Seattle, towns like Redmond, Bellevue, Issaquah. Those are the three cities or towns that I lived in.
What would that be like here in Chicago? Give people a picture.
Well, Redmond, you guys should all know. There's several famous things in Redmond, Washington. Mm-hmm. Do you know?
No.
You don't?
I don't.
There's a little company called Microsoft.
Oh, okay.
That is based in Redmond, Washington.
Okay.
And a little company called Nintendo.
Yeah, of America.
That is based in Redmond, Washington.
Yeah.
So Redmond's, that bigwig.
It's kind of
Bellevue's like that too. And
yeah.
Bellevue's sort of a little upper crusty.
Upper crusty.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Bellevue, if you go to Bellevue today, you're like, oh, I live in Bellevue.
So Redmond is like the Silicon Valley of the of the Northwest.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
the whole Microsoft campus is there.
That's incredible.
And then Issaquah was kind of on the edge of the city, but it was still kind of a quaint little spot. I don't know what you say. Like Crystal Lake's a little bit like Issaquah would be.
Okay. Yeah.
But out in the mountains and stuff.
Yeah, there's a little bit more elevation change.
Yeah.
Not as flat.
Yeah. So I grew up there in a family that went to church sometimes. I guess most weekends they go to church. And as I got a little bit older, we'd get involved in some of the midweek stuff. But it was the midweek stuff that we went to was in this Lutheran church. Always mainline churches. Mainline meaning like, hey, Jesus is great. You should like him and do exactly what he does.
Yes.
So your life will be better if you do that. But not a lot of gospel.
Okay.
Meaning that not a lot of like, Jesus died for you and you know, you can't fulfill the law on your on your own. You need Jesus to fulfill it on your, that kind of stuff. Never kind of atonement talk like that.
Yeah. So what changed then?
My pastor used to the one sermon I ever remember the pastor of this little Lutheran church preaching that I went to was when he actually put on clown makeup while he was preaching the sermon.
Amazing.
Yeah. Which is really my viewpoints of pastors.
Yeah.
It was.
They were clowns.
They were clowns.
Yes.
Yeah. But they wore a lot of khaki.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah. Cargo, too. You got to have pockets. Got to keep your mini New Testament in there.
They loved their khaki and a little cardigan sweaters with
Mr.
their
Rogers
ties and, boring, long, horrible sermons. And my sister and I used to play tic-tac-toe or count the ceiling tiles.
Yeah.
When we got older, tried to throw pencils and make them stick in the ceiling tiles.
Wow. What?
We were not good.
Do you remember the illustration that he was going for with the? You just remember the clown makeup.
Just the clown. I do remember at that church though. One point, maybe it was another Lutheran church. I think it was another Lutheran church. The youth guy ended up having to line me, my sister, and another person up like 6 feet apart in chairs. It was like COVID before COVID.
Yeah, right.
They lined us up and were lecturing us of how bad we had been.
So you were those kids.
Yeah. We were not.
I know them well.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was
as a
giggling
youth pastor.
the whole time. Yeah.
So, I mean, you go from being kind of the uninterested, almost rebellious.
Oh, I didn't want to have anything to do with Christianity. No, I was really not interested in it for a very short period of time. It was, going to church and stuff just seemed a little bit dry and dull. And I was only in middle school at the time, but I was like, in the moment I can get out of this, I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you were in middle school during this time.
Yeah.
So then what changed as you got
at the end
did anything change?
Yeah. In the end of middle school, I was going to this school and there was several good friends. And one day I went to school and one of my friends was spreading really horrible rumors about me, and the whole school kind of, talk about canceled.
Yeah.
That was like it. I thank God today. I thank God today that I was not today, because it would have been online and I probably would have killed myself or something.
Yeah.
But a bunch of rumors that they were spreading, which weren't true. But I was so overwhelmed with shock. I went home. Yeah. That day when I found out these rumors, I went home, and of course everybody said, "Oh, it must be true, right?" Because he went home. And then I was alone. I was a kid who was sitting in the cafeteria at the end of the table. Nobody would sit by at all. Having gone from having lots of friends to being like a pariah.
So when these rumors came out, it kind of changed.
Yeah, it changed everything.
Your social structure.
Oh yeah, nobody would want to have anything to do with me.
Wow.
And so I ended up moving from schools, but that was the moment in my life where I realized I don't have anybody at all or anything at all. I'd been to Christian camp.
Okay.
So when I was young, I prayed a prayer at a Christian camp, right? And I remember the moment when I did it. But you know how Christian camp goes. You go for a weekend and then you go away, and then or a week and then you go away, and you go back to your mainline church and then you come back and then you go. So I was a camp Christian, I guess, but did not like church. Didn't want to be involved in church very much. until this happened.
Okay.
Right. And I remember, of course, the prayer that I prayed, that I did believe it.
Yeah.
It was the first time maybe in my life where I realized that the only one I have is God. And I grabbed my Bible and started reading it every day.
Wow.
Just because I didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And and so I ended up changing schools. The next year, going to another school in another area because my parents moved.
Is this still in middle school?
I was in now grade 9, or sorry.
Yeah.
But it was
freshman.
Yeah. Basically,
A
went to another
freshie?
school, went to another school, and and then I ended up getting involved with this guy who was I went to a different church that a friend of mine. We kept talking about going to because the pastor was a football player, former football player, and I showed up to his youth group because he ran the youth group too, and I showed up to the youth group, and I walked through the door, and seriously, he pointed right at my face, and he said, "You coming this weekend to the whatever it was called, Teen Jamboree, or which I think is what it was called,
Teen Jamboree."
Yeah, back in those days, back in the 80s and 90s, you named stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
Teen Funbury.
Yeah,
type,
Jubilee.
So, and I was like, and he's huge. He's like 6'2", 260.
Yeah.
Like black man. And I had grown up with only white people in my whole life. And this guy points, and he's former football player, just cut.
Yeah.
Point at you. You're like, yes, sir.
Yeah, whatever you say.
I will do that. So I did. I went with them to that, and then he invited me to come to his house with a bunch of other high school kids and he called it a discipleship group. And it was amazing. Yeah. So that's really how I started following Christ, is through sorrow and difficulty and loneliness, followed up by God placing in my life this delightful mentor who ended up taking me under his wing.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Now, did you then start playing football because you wanted?
No, it's terrible.
Did you play any sports in high school?
But you know what? Listen, I go on Monday nights, and we would have from like 7:30 till whatever 9:30 or 10. We would be at his house, and we go through books of the Bible, and we talk about all sorts of stuff. But from 5:30 to 7:30, he had a group of men, like 20 or 30 men that would meet there, and like 5 of them were Seahawks.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we used to get there early.
Yes, right.
And hang out with these Seahawks.
That's incredible.
Which was amazing for us, and got to know a few of them pretty well. And they were great. They were great people.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. They used to buy extra Kentucky Fried Chicken wings for us.
That's
Yeah, because they would eat dinner all together, and then
Yes.
a couple of the guys would be like, "Yeah, I bought this for you." You know,
That's so kind of them.
Wings. And we did.
Wings. I mean, that's like a high schooler's dream.
It is. Can you imagine that?
No.
Like I get to go over to the house of a former
Yes.
NFL player and hang out for several minutes talking and hanging out with other NFL players. They leave, and then I get to hang out with a group of 5, 6, 7 guys going through the Bible.
Yeah.
Here's crazy. Out of those 5, 6, 7 guys, there's like 6. I think 6 of the 7 are in full-time ministry.
Really? As pastors?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
Like, pastors one of the guys was pastoring in London for a while, and my other friend, who's still a really good friend of mine, he's pastoring in Bellevue, Washington, just on the east side of Seattle.
Right.
Me here.
Yeah.
What a little note. If you ever want to be in ministry and really have a significant impact in the lives of people, gather a group of whoever around you. Younger guys around you, if you're a guy, and just build into their lives. You'd be shocked at what the Lord does with that.
I mean, and he did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
Crazy,
what an impact.
Crazy story, which I'll listen, this is my life, so you're going to hear these stories in sermons again, but crazy story. Years later, when I was a pastor up in Canada, and my church had grown and grown to be one of the largest churches in the country. And I went back to the church where my mentor, and it was in the Seattle area, and I showed up at the door of the church, and they still met in high school. And I walked into the door, and I didn't know if he was going to recognize me. And he stopped, and he looked at me and goes, "Jeff Bucknam," gave me a big hug and all that kind of stuff. And he asked what I was doing, and I told him, that God had put me in this church. And I told him all the other places that I'd been and that God had placed me in this church. And the Lord had done a great work, had grown it and these kind of things. Anyway, he had to go preach a sermon. So he goes up in front, and he was the kind of guy who, before the service, he'd walk down the aisles and just say hello to like with a microphone.
Yeah.
He'd walk down the aisles and
hey, how are you doing?
Yeah, talk about stuff. Just like the first 10 minutes of the service was him just hamming it up, enjoying people, and just saying, "Hey, you doing good stuff?" Anyway, he was walking down the aisle, and anyway, I was sitting kind of in the kind of back balcony. It's like our church at Elgin kind of goes up at the back.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, I was sitting back there with my wife and my two boys, and he stopped. He looked at me and he said, "Jeff, can you stand up for a minute?" So I stood up. I mean, it's a pretty large church, right? And so he kind of stood up for a minute, and I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Let me tell you about this guy." And then he said, from his point of view, he walked in one day. I told him to come to the youth thing that weekend, and then he kept showing up at my house for all 4 or 5 years, and ended up shooting off and all this stuff. And he said, and then he came into this door today and told me about his church, and then he just stopped, paused for a long time, and got a little misty-eyed and said, "That is the fruit of your labor, ladies and gentlemen." And I was like, wow, yeah.
It's amazing that he remembered all of it, too.
Oh, yeah, crazy thing.
Yeah.
He actually is the guy who, that church, his church is the one that actually planted Mars Hill Church.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mark Driscoll actually came to work at the church right when I left.
Wow. At that church?
At that church, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, crazy.
It's crazy how everything's kind of connected.
Everything
is connected.
I'm like the sun around which the planets spin.
Yes. It's because of you, Jeff.
Not. Anyway.
So you have this amazing, wow. What a journey that is.
Yeah.
To go from like the lowest of low to...
Well, when you're a kid, when I was young, I couldn't believe, it was hard for me to understand why the Lord would, on the one hand, I look back at it and I think, well, it was what he used to bring me into a real relationship, but it stung. It's stuck with me for years, right? Fear of rejection and fear of loneliness and fear of, and the self-accusing thoughts of like that it's all, your whole life is going to end because those people will turn on you, and all that kind of stuff sticks with you for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And really became the source of some of my mental health stuff that I've had to deal with in my life. I've dealt with, 4 or 5 significant depressions, and it's always those kinds of thoughts that are ones that plague me the most. But, the Lord has used all of that. In my life, I've had to get used to being sometimes the only one who stands alone to stand up for certain things that nobody else, which, you look at your life in the ministry that you've been in and the willingness that I probably have to go into places that are a little harder without having a ton of people to help.
Right.
Yeah. It's been because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's formative.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. What happens to our kids when we're kids is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up going, and I played tennis in high school.
You did? Okay.
Big tennis player.
Big tennis guy?
I look like a tennis player, don't I?
I was going to say that. Yeah. You're
quiet. I played a bunch of other sports. I grew up in doing athletics. No matter what it was, swimming, tennis,
activity,
basketball, baseball, everything. Not really football, soccer.
Okay. What's your best sport? Tennis?
Yep, racket sports.
Really?
Yeah.
So badminton?
Racquetball. Squash. I played a lot of squash when I was in New Zealand.
What's the difference between those two?
Squash has a flatter ball.
Okay.
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more played everywhere too.
Yeah.
So anyway,
wow.
I played tennis. I was the captain of our tennis team.
All right.
I got second in the state.
That's big.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a pretty big time tennis player.
12 years old. Who's your favorite tennis player?
When I was a kid, it was Bjorn Borg.
Okay.
Bjorn Borg.
What a name.
Pete Sampras. I really loved Pete Sampras.
Okay. I know that name. Yeah. I don't know Bjorn Borg.
Yeah. Didn't like Andre Agassi as much.
I know that name too.
Yeah.
And Roger Federer.
And then modern stuff. Yeah, he's great. I actually think he's a pretty classy dude.
Yeah.
Federer. So I appreciate him.
Wow.
But Sampras was like, if you said, who's the best you ever saw? Sampras really was the best tennis player I ever saw.
Wow. And do you still play?
Yeah, but my backhand is terrible. It's so bad. And I'm like, I'm not even going to hit that anymore.
You're not even going to hit so it's all forehands now.
But when I go out and play pickleball and stuff,
yes,
the strategy and stuff, Like I dominate pickleball.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
Smaller court.
I'll beat the snot out of people in pickleball. I take all comers.
Okay. At one point here in the building, we had pickleball. So,
really?
Yeah.
It's usually, if I ever play pickleball, which I don't very often, but it's usually me and there's a bunch of old people out there. And I love it. Dude, I'm telling you.
You just crush.
When I play the 75-year-olds, I dominate.
Yeah. I believe you.
I do. I'm like the best player.
I'm like the best. So I think, that naturally, like we should just start a pickleball ministry now.
Totally.
Here at Elgin.
Is that how we do it?
Yeah. You like that?
You like pickleball? We should do a ministry.
Pickleball. Let's get together.
True youth pastor.
Yeah, that's right. You like that? Let's do a ministry about it. It's perfect. Oh my goodness. So that was high school.
Yeah, and then I went to college at.
You could say university.
I know,
it's okay.
It sounds a little bit too European. I went to college at the University of Washington my first year, and that was when I dealt with one of my first big depressions. And I was just overwhelmed with grief for a series of reasons, and I couldn't handle it. So I ended up transferring to a smaller school called Western Washington University, which is like on the very upper northwest corner of the entire United States. It's a town called Bellingham, and loved it. Yeah. I really loved it. It was smaller, it was about 15 or 12,000 students or something like that. And I lived in a dorm. There wasn't a Greek system there.
Okay.
So everybody kind of lived in the dorms, and I met great friends, and it's where I met my wife. Which is a story for another day.
Is it? Or is it a story for today, Jeff?
This is going to last way too long if you keep asking me the question.
Listen, I feel like we've got a good hour here.
Okay, so listen, the way I met my wife.
Yes, give us the
I'm going to give you
summary.
The Cliff's Notes version. Yes. The way I met my wife is I was coming out of a shower block in the middle of my dorm hall, and I had a towel around my waist, and she was in the doorway of my room, and I had to squeeze by her with only a towel on.
Wow.
And she was so overwhelmed with awe.
Yeah, right.
At the sheer muscles.
The tennis body.
That she was like,
yeah.
And speechless. Absolutely speechless.
Yeah.
And from then on, I had to beat her away like a moth to a flame.
Yes.
No,
it wasn't like that?
I did actually walk by her.
Yes.
With just a towel on, so yeah.
And was it love at first walk by?
No, my wife is amazing. And so, she was dating this guy, this other dude.
That's how it always starts.
When I say dating, like
courting.
They'd gone out too, and he was just a tool.
Yeah, zero.
Right?
Yeah.
Like really, really handsome, big guy, like big, strong, muscly guy.
Yeah.
In the gym 3 hours every morning.
Yeah, of course.
But just dumb as a rock.
Yeah.
And would say stuff about, like he was kind of Christian, not really. Anyway, so he was dating her he went out on a couple dates with her. And then I was in his room, actually, playing video games with his roommate.
Of course.
And he came in the door, and he was supposed to be out on some sort of date with her. And so his roommate goes, well, aren't you supposed to be out on a date with Jeannie? And he goes, nah, she dumped me. And I said, why? And he said, I'm not Christian enough or something like that.
Yeah.
No joke. I put down my controller for my video game. I stood up without a word, walked straight out the door, walked down to the stairway, went down 2 floors to her floor, walked down the hall, knocked on her door. She opened the door. I stepped in and I said, good for you.
Yeah.
I said, I'm so tired of girls dating some boneheaded guy because he's got a bicep.
Yeah. He's got abs on his triceps. Yeah.
But I'm very proud of you.
Yeah.
I said this. Total silence. She sort of looked at me like, so?
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Yeah,
why
right.
Are you knocking on the door? And I said, remember there's silence. And then I said, well, thanks.
Yeah.
So I walked away. She's like, oh, no, thanks.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. That reminds me from a scene from a movie.
It felt like a scene from a movie.
Well, big gulps,
Even now, she
See
can.
you later.
Yeah, when she tells the story, she's like, I didn't even know what to do. This guy walked into my room.
It is kind of like a unique,
what are you doing? I was just sitting here doing my homework, and somebody knocks on the door and says, good for you, you dump that bonehead.
Yeah. That takes boldness, though, from you to do that. Because you guys didn't know each other very well at the time.
No, not at all.
You took your shot, though.
I did.
It was like a first shot, though. Like
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we ended up getting to know each other. So there's a whole bunch of other stories involved in this, but yeah, we ended up getting to know each other through, over a couple of years. And I was only 21 years old when we got married. She was 20. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to get married forever.
Wow.
I had to go save the world. Right?
Yeah, right, of course.
But you met her in college, and I ended up having like 6 months left to do my degree. Afterwards, I became a youth pastor out in Eastern Washington State with with her father-in-law as my with her father as my boss.
Yeah. So she's a PK.
Yeah, and she transferred to
that means pastor's kid.
Yeah,
by the way,
graduate from a school called Washington State University. Yeah, and that was my first foray into kind of official ministry.
That's awesome. Being a youth pastor.
Yeah, 2 years in, I ran out of stuff to say.
It does tend to happen.
Yeah, well, I went to a capernwray school for like 3 months.
Yeah. Explain that a little bit.
I just decided that, when I was in college, I was like, I had some friends who were like, hey, we're going to go for 3 months to Austria. You want to come? I was like, yeah.
Yes.
He said, well, you got to take a break from school. You got to come back and do like a summer term at your college, but we're going to go for these 3 months to Austria. And I went there. It was great. But that's pretty much between that and what Hutch taught me, my mentor taught me. That's pretty much all I had.
Yeah, wow.
And it took me 2 years to run the entire gamut of all that I knew.
All that you knew.
I actually remember the day, thinking to the day. Well, I'm done.
That's
like, with all the kids. And my father-in-law, he went to Dallas Seminary, and he told me. I asked him, where do I go? What do I do? And he said, well, Dallas Seminary is the seminary you need to go to.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay. But so I looked at like 4 or 5 of them, and I am visiting Dallas. My dad was on a business trip, and he invited me to come along to see a couple of the schools that were nearby where he was. And I went to Dallas, and it was like 110 in the middle of the summer.
Right.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
And yet I felt like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is like the perfect spot for me to study. Yeah. So I did.
So you and Jeannie are married at this time?
Yeah.
Do you have any kids yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Went to Dallas Seminary. Was there I did a Master of Theology degree, which is a 4-year degree.
That's a big one.
I'm impatient, so I did it in 3 years.
Of course you did.
I did.
Of course you did.
And then my wife was teaching at the time. She kind of put me through that. And then we moved to New Zealand, where I actually took a role as a professor.
How on earth does something like that happen?
Yeah.
You're in Texas.
Yeah.
Finishing your degree.
I needed to do a field education module, which is like an internship.
Okay.
For a summer.
Yeah.
And the place that I was going to do it said, yeah, we can't have you. Like at the 2 days before I had to turn the thing in, they said, I'm sorry, we can't have you. It's our bad. We just didn't plan it. So I was having a dinner, tacos with my friend, Alan, his wife, Kathleen. And they were Kiwis, New Zealanders.
Oh, okay.
And he said, oh, you want to come and do yours with me? I said, wait. He said, I'm going to be in New Zealand for the summer, and you'll do that.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay.
So anyway, he said, well, just wait, I'll make a call when I get back to my house. So we finished our tacos. They went back to their house, their little apartment, which is just around the corner from ours. Dumpiest apartments ever. I lived in like cockroaches everywhere.
But delicious.
He called me like 20 minutes later and said, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, it's good, mate.
It's good, mate.
And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, it's all good. So that's how it happened.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Are you a spontaneous guy?
No.
Because it seems like you are.
But my wife was like, we were sort of like, what? And if you knew New Zealanders, that's what they do, though. That's how it works.
It's all matter of factly.
Talk to my friend. He'll be good. So yeah, he talked to his mate, and we went over to New Zealand, where we were. It's in the middle of winter there during the American summer.
Okay.
So it was cold. 1998.
Actually cold?
Yeah, cold.
Okay.
Yeah, really cool. But I taught at this little school, and I fell in love with teaching.
Yeah.
Teaching in the classroom.
What were you teaching?
Oh, all sorts of stuff. Just all sorts of stuff from seminary that I learned from seminary, and loved it. Absolutely loved it, and said that's what I want to do. I want to be a teacher. I'm going to teach. I didn't want to be pastor.
Yeah, right.
That's like the worst thing because you had to wear the khakis, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be.
How is that different from a teacher? Do teachers don't wear?
No. See, if you're a professor, people call you doctor.
Yeah, right.
Such and such. And when they ask you on an airplane, like what do you do? You're like, I'm a professor.
I'm a professor.
And they're like, whoa.
Ooh, doesn't matter if you're wearing khakis at that point.
Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're a pastor, you wear the khakis and you hug your coffee.
Yeah.
And you talk
What
about
is this move right here?
Yeah, you talk about your feelings to everybody.
Yes.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
How did you feel about that?
Yeah.
And I'm not that guy.
You're not a feely guy?
I'm not that guy. So I wanted to be a professor, and so I ended up getting so that school that I worked at, they were what they call amalgamating with another school. Basically, they were forming a new school in the city of Auckland, and they said, "You want to come and teach with us?" And when I graduated, and I did.
Wow.
Yeah, made absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And went there and taught for a couple of years. It was a crazy experience in the city of Auckland for 2 years. But I kept it.
Was that a big city in New Zealand?
Yeah, it's about at that point 1.5 million people.
Oh yeah,
it's
okay.
beautiful.
Yeah, that's a big city. Well,
Crazy.
and for those people who don't know, like Lord of the Rings, if anyone is a nerd and likes that, like me, that's where they filmed.
Yeah, all of it.
A majority, if not all of the movie was in those sweeping, beautiful.
Yeah, that's in the South Island. A lot of that. The North Island, Auckland's called the City of Sails because it's right on a beautiful harbor, and there's a gulf called the Hauraki Gulf, and there's some islands out in the middle. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's absolutely beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go, you should go.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if they're ever going to open. So
yeah, right.
You might want to wait. For a while.
Yeah. Might be a couple years.
But I loved living there. The thing is, though, is I was teaching at a school, but there's a lot of churches around that are like they needed somebody to preach on the weekends, and so
For sure.
they asked me, and then somebody else said, "Oh, he's pretty good," and so another asked me, and another asked. So I was doing this kind of itinerant ministry on weekends, going to different churches.
Wow.
Little ones, bigger ones, all sorts of stuff. Preaching my sermon.
What is the state of Christianity in New Zealand?
Oh, not post-Christian.
Post-Christian.
Right, like like when I moved it back to Canada, I would say Canada is more Christian than New Zealand was in terms of like I ended up taking a position as a teaching pastor in the South Island of New Zealand after going through this weird coming back to the U.S. and applying to a ton of schools, churches and stuff, and they all saying no, and then the Lord leading kind of us back to New Zealand. And I took this position in the South Island of New Zealand, and our church, town about, I don't know, Nelson and Richmond, the towns I was in, was 85,000 people.
Yeah.
There would have been, I could have counted on one hand the number of churches that I would have said were gospel churches. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so post-Christian. What are some of and how long did you stay in New Zealand for? How
So
many
2 years in Auckland and 5 years in Nelson.
Okay, so pretty good amount of...
7 years.
Did you pick up on the accent?
Yeah.
Were you,
Yeah. My wife was great. She hit it.
Yeah.
Kiwis mumble a bit more. So Australians, they open their mouths a lot, mate.
Yeah, wow. You have that down.
No, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they eat their fish and chips.
Yes.
That's how they say their eyes. There's always fish, chips, right? Whereas Kiwis, they are sort of mumbling everything, right? Yeah. What are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that's how you could tell the difference.
Yeah. A lot of that. Yeah. No. That's how they say no.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
so in you can always tell in New Zealand because it sounds a little mumblier.
Okay.
But the Australians are always out there a bit more.
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, that's a knife.
That's not a knife. This is a knife.
Yeah.
Wow. Sorry for offending everyone with that. When
I was there, a lot of everybody, I could do the Australian accent really easily.
Right.
So
immersed in the culture.
People would often say to me, "You from Oz?"
Okay.
Aussie.
Yeah.
Oz. I say no.
Nah. So you spent a big chunk of time in New Zealand.
Loved it.
Is that where you guys had kids?
Yeah, I was given two of my boys. One was in Auckland and the other one was in Nelson. And they're tri-citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah. New Zealand, Canadian, and American.
That's crazy.
All three passports. So I I loved it there, and I really that's really where I cut my teeth preaching.
Yeah, right.
Like,
because you were youth pastor for 2 years.
Yeah, youth pastor for 2 years, and then I was like seminary, and then I had 2 years of teaching and itinerant ministry.
Okay.
And then I became the teaching pastor of this church for 5 years.
Wow.
And it was funny because between those 2 times, between the teaching in Auckland, the 2 years teaching in Auckland, the 5 years teaching pastor, we came back to the United States. In fact, I remember interviewing at a church in Chicago in Wheaton.
Okay.
Yeah. But there were like 73 churches that I applied to. And it was always like for teaching or preaching kind of work.
Sure.
And, when you're 28, 29 years old, they're like, no,
Too
we're not
young.
giving you any chance.
Yeah.
No. But in New Zealand, they were like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
So you cut your teeth preaching, and you learn how to communicate with people. And so, yeah. But after 5 years, it's a long way away.
It is.
You had
it's very long way.
little kids, and we had a few miscarriages, and so my wife she just, we had our last one was a bit hard, and I remember she was just crying on the bed one day and said, I want to go home. Yeah. And I think that really, that was the end for me. I just was like, we either were going to stay there for a very long time, or we're going to come back. And so we decided that we would, I don't know. It was really in a moment of weakness. I got on the internet and I looked at one of those websites to look for a place near the northwestern part of the United States.
Because that's where her
within
parents
driving,
are.
Within driving distance of the northwestern part of the United States. And there was a church in a town called Abbotsford, British Columbia.
Okay.
And I had to look it up on a map because I knew BC. I knew where British Columbia was, just north of.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
I absolutely know
British Columbia.
No, but I didn't know where Abbotsford was. So I'm just like on the outskirts of Vancouver.
Yes.
And I was like, all right, that's close enough. Like, go across the border. It's probably, 45 minutes an hour away from her parents. So that's close enough. So anyway, it was a young adults pastor position, and I sent a resume, and my wife, I remember coming out and saying to my wife, I sent a resume to this church in Canada, and she was like, what? Like, you did whatever. They're not going to. So anyway, like 2 days later, they contacted me and said, hey, we really interested in your resume, and got talked to the guy for 45 minutes on the phone, and then I got another phone call, and then typical Northview, which is the church, they were like, can you come up here next week? I was like,
next week. Yeah.
I said, you guys know where New Zealand is, right?
Yeah. It's going to take me all week to get there.
It's a long way away, and it's kind of expensive. Yes. So they were like, no, just come up.
Wow.
And when I went there, I didn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was large. It was kind of a large church, and it similar kind of to Harvest situation now, right?
Yeah.
Coming off the back of some difficult moments.
Yeah.
And the pastor was, he'd gotten sick, and the elder board had resigned, and they had just fired the interim guy, the guy who was interim, and then he was supposed to replace him, and they had fired him a few months earlier, and I was like, eey. But at that point, I was like, listen, I just need to go back to the United States and or somewhere in North America to get our feet settled. I was planning on doing maybe a doctoral study somewhere.
Yeah.
Chicago again. In fact, I had some arrangements made with a guy at Wheaton to do a
amazing.
doctorate with him. And so we ended up going back.
Yeah.
And I was a young adults pastor for like 17, 18 months.
Wow. And you weren't a young adults pastor in New Zealand, right?
I did a lot of leadership development with the young adults, right?
Okay.
And a lot of teaching. So when I showed up there, they didn't have a lead pastor.
Yeah.
In Canada. And so I show up and I start preaching, and which is what I did. I started preaching, and I was preaching twice a month as the young adults pastor. So every week as young adults pastor, and then I was preaching twice a month. I was preaching a lot, man.
Yeah,
and they didn't have a lead pastor, and they kept looking for people. Years took them years.
Yes,
and nobody wanted to do it because it was kind of a
difficulty.
A dumpster fire.
Yeah, right.
And anyway, they eventually came to me and said, so would you want to interview for this role?
As lead teacher?
Yeah, as the lead pastor. And I said, sure. I said, you do know, though, like if this doesn't work out, I'm not going to stay. I mean, we weren't going to stay anyway. We were only going to be there for 3 years. It really was not the the vibe of the church wasn't really our thing at the time. It
Yeah.
was just not. It was kind of seeker sensitive, which is it's fine. It's just that, I'm kind of like, hey, let's just study what this Bible says. And
Yes.
here's the passage, and let me explain it to you. Anyway, so they ended up saying, I say that they got collectively drunk and hired me because in some ways I look back at it and I think to myself, I have no idea how it is that they ever hired me to be the pastor of that church.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
You were there for...
I just think it's very funny. Even the search committee, I know the people in the search committee here now. I'm like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I think you guys were just tired.
Yes.
And they did. And so they ended up hiring me. And, God was kind, very kind in clearing out some people who didn't like me.
Yes.
And bringing along people who were like, I'm on board with this. And my belief was always that the church needed to transition to being a church that had kind of my belief has always been that you can be a theologically rich, biblically faithful church that is really culturally competent.
Yeah.
Do you know, that can speak the language of the culture,
Yes.
that can do ministry that reaches the needs of the culture, and yet still be really faithful to the Bible. I just don't see why those two things are mutually exclusive. And so the idea was always, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so in a post-Christian setting, it was probably the right kind of thing because, in a post-Christian setting, people aren't just going to show up to the church because you have a light show.
For sure.
Because they're like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to light shows anywhere. I need to know what this church teaches or what you guys believe about the meaning of life and the world. And
Yes.
who's Jesus and the trouble I'm having in my life with these things and how. So we just addressed a lot of that stuff kind of head on.
Like right away?
Yeah, well, over time, I just my thing was like we just preached the Bible, and whenever a passage comes up and it includes stuff to talk about issues like slavery or gender issues or universalism or anything.
Sure.
We just say, oh well, this is something that's in the culture, so let's talk about that cultural piece. And I was the lead pastor for 13 years.
Yeah.
And the young adults for 2.
Okay.
Close to 2. Anyway, God just grew the church and grew it and grew it and grew it.
Yeah.
Grew it and grew it. And, after a while, it just, we was a little bit stunned at all of it. I'm the last person I would have ever thought to be a megachurch pastor.
Well, yeah.
Like I'm the last person.
How did that unfold? So, you did.
I'm the guy who doesn't like pastor coffee cups huggers. I'm not. Even now, I think to myself, oh my gosh, I'm just not.
How is it? Yeah.
I'm not the arm around the side. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, not the side hug kind of guy.
Well, I just not. That's just not. Yeah. Anyway.
So how different was it going from being a young adults pastor to jumping in? And the church was a pretty big size when you came into it, right?
It was about, I can't remember what it was. I think we had about 1,700 people at the church at that time. It had dwindled down from, I think there were about 3,000 people at one point, but it dwindled down in the time that they'd had all this trouble.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, the Lord, we had, I don't know, right before COVID hit, we had about 6,000 people attending. And then we had, and then on COVID, we started because people felt like they could kind of be involved in other churches.
Sure.
We just had this, our media ministry just went really big in Canada. We had lots of people watching from all over the place. And like I said, dude, I'm not. Like he said to me, "Hey, Jeff, you go watch that guy, the Jeff." I'd be like, "Nah, you shouldn't do that because he's a bit of a weirdo." But the Lord's just kind of done that in my life. But I got tired. Yeah, and by tired, there was a lot that went on. It was great. I kind of thought, well, either I'm going to continue down this path for a long time, and I'd committed myself to be there for a very, very long time. Yeah. I was planning on, we were going to build a building and do all this, everything. We were going to do it. And then COVID hit. I was struggling prior to COVID hitting with the future, and I just committed myself to it. The church had, the night before COVID shut everything down, we had passed a building plan. So I was in. Yeah. Going to be there for the rest of my ministry days. Yep. COVID hit, shut everything down, and I don't know what I just started to think, right, so either there's going to change, either I'm going to change now or get through COVID and see what we do. And I just started wondering if I had the interest in doing the same thing. I'd seen this renewal of this church, and I'd seen God act in this really cool way. And then, a friend pointed out Harvest. And I was like, wow, now that would be really cool to see a ministry like that revitalized.
Yeah.
After all of the difficulty and challenges that they'd been through. I'd been through something very similar in the last church, and I felt like when you take on a church at 34, 35 that way, you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But when you're 48, 49, you're like, oh, actually, like I've been here before.
Yeah.
Do you know? And
God's uniquely equipped you.
Right. And
through your story.
The more I heard about the church, the more so I sent a resume off.
Yeah. I remember it well.
Did you?
I do.
I sent this resume off, and I was, you guys had some search group, and I was like, yeah, whatever. My wife was laughing at the time. She's like, "Oh, come on."
Oh, come on.
And I keep she's whenever I say stuff like, "Hey, I've thought about it," she's like, "Don't you dare.
Don't you dare."
Because now she knows
she's gun shy now.
Get in trouble, but yeah. And every time I talk to the search committee, I loved talking to them, and I found them just really engaging people. You were on the search committee.
Yeah, we like talking to you too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I don't know if we made that obvious or not.
No, not always. But it was. I felt like we got along, and I felt like there was a real heart. I actually really came to love the heart of Harvest before I got here, in the sense that I just felt like you guys had been through a really hard providence.
Yeah. Over
the last little while, like somebody who's gone through a lot of difficult moments for whatever reasons. Yeah. And you were kind of, I don't know, a little bit bruised. Mm-hmm. And a little bloody over the eye on the side of the road, and you just need, I don't know, I just kept feeling like, I told my wife repeatedly, I don't know if I can turn away from something like that. I feel like there's a Bible passage about that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But it was hard.
Yeah.
Eventually,
for sure.
Because that's part of the problem. You spend all this time at this other church, and you give up all, you have all these friends, and you have all the, everything was great. Yeah. There was nothing really bad at all about it. Right. Other people were like, why would you, when I told them that I was leaving, they were like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Especially to go to a difficult, it's like one thing.
Yeah. Was it not hard enough here?
Yeah. And yet that's the funny thing about me is I'm kind of like, well, I don't know. You get one life to live.
Yeah.
And if you, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yes. Or what did the kids used to say? # YOLO.
Yeah,
you only live once.
Yeah, and I also realized too that I think that God has given me a special set of experiences and gifts that can, Lord willing, be a help.
Yeah.
To the church here, and I hope they will be, and I hope they are. Sorry, you're not even asking questions now.
It's fine. No, just keep
going. Stream of consciousness.
We're used to this, No.
No, my hope is that it's going to turn out to be a great blessing. And my view of ministries like this is that even if it doesn't, like if I give my best for the period of time the Lord has me here, and I'm able to help the church recover or revitalize in however much direction I can,
Yeah.
Then that's my contribution to it. And somebody else will come and they'll build the next phase. Yeah. And that's okay too. But don't hear me as saying I want to leave Harvest. I come here.
Don't hear that.
No, I come to Harvest with fully intent. I told my wife this is that like I would like this to be the last ministry I do.
Yeah.
Like least last ministry I do in any kind of like leadership earnest way. Yeah. And so I'm here for as long as I can be.
Yeah.
But again, when you go into these things, people kept saying, you're going to go there, it's going to be horrible because all this stuff's going to, whatever, media and tweeting and all,
Sure.
And I've just kind of been like, well, it doesn't really matter. I've been tweeted about before, and I've had it's okay. I'm okay. Yeah. Like I said, bringing this all the way back, when you're a little kid and you have to sit all alone in the corner of the lunchroom, it toughens your skin a little bit to realize that you don't actually, that God will care for you. even in the hardest moments.
Yes.
And often you look back at those hardest moments and you realize that it's only because of them that you're able to do the stuff you're able to do now. So, yeah, it's really thankful I'm here, though.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
me too. A lot of us are. All of us are. And I said a lot, and I meant all.
I don't think all.
We're just going to say all.
Yeah.
And so quickly before we get to,
if you don't like me, by the way, you have Tommy to blame because he was on the search committee. He could have made a difference. He could have made a difference. You had every chance.
I had every chance. Son. Tell me, it was the moment that I showed you my bike on the Zoom call that you were like, "This is the place," right? Of course, right?
Yeah.
Naturally.
Yeah. Well, I came and visited here, and I spent some time with all the young leaders here, like a number of them from Vertical Worship and others. And that was really kind of the clincher in my mind, clincher in terms of like, right. So like I came here kind of for a vision. My goal at my old church was we got to the point where I kept telling them, listen, I just think that God has placed us in a position in Canada to be an engine for church planning and leadership development.
Yes.
We had young people all around. We had some colleges around. We had just I just kept thinking we have finance.
Yeah.
Like what is the Lord is so invested in that church. I kept telling him, so I feel like we've got the engine of a Ferrari in this church. And I'd make jokes and I sometimes feel like we drive it like a golf cart.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I mean? And I was like, but we should just drive it like a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And what would happen if we actually started to push forward and try to make differences in church planning and stuff? And that was the direction we were heading in. Really excited about it. Like so excited about it. Other people were getting on board too. When I left the church, some guy, he died and he gave $10 million to my old church.
Wow.
And I totally, I've already talked to them about a finder's fee, but they weren't interested.
Sure.
But I came to Harvest because I could see the wonderful ministry design by those who'd gone before me here. Like it's a remarkable guts to this place with lots of vision and lots of foundations that are just delightful and amazing.
Yeah.
I keep saying it was like a listing luxury liner. And I kept thinking, man, if Northview's a Ferrari, then this thing is like a jet. Do you know? What if you could rev the engine of that jet? What if you could actually point it in the direction that it actually already wanted to go and was going?
Yeah.
Church planting and developing leaders and stuff. What if you could get there and you could get people to have confidence in the leadership and the future, and people were just on board with the vision of both the church and seeing the fruit of that kind of, giving away, sending ministry.
Yeah.
I just kept thinking, man, the impact could be huge.
Unthinkable. Yeah.
And then you wouldn't just have one church that has this vision. You'd have two churches. So you had a Ferrari and a jet.
Yeah.
And maybe in the process, other jets and other Maseratis would come along and go, maybe we've been driving our Maserati like a golf cart.
Sure.
And maybe we should unleash it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And you're already...
These are the dreams.
Yeah, well, the vision's already starting here. We've got the leadership development starting in the new year, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
And you guys are already revving the engine a little bit and getting people excited. I know I, for one, am super excited about it.
It's going to be fun.
And
it has been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. And it will be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredible. We're excited.
By the way, somebody asked a question the other day
about
what the vision... Somebody asked me, what's your vision? What's the strategic vision for the podcast?
Yeah.
So here's my strategic vision for the podcast.
Give it to us.
I just think that most of the stories we hear are about the bigwig people.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has a story to tell about God's providence and grace in their lives. And the more we tell the stories, the more we're encouraged that people... If God works in the lives of people like me, he can absolutely and does work in your life too. And if you stop and you tell your own story over a microphone, you would see at the end of it that God has done something so great in your life. Even though it's been full of pain and heartache and stuff, when you take a step back and you see God's providence over your whole life, you've realized how gracious he's been.
Yeah.
And I just think that edifies people a lot.
Big time.
Yeah.
Me too. Well, Jeff, thank you for having a conversation.
Absolutely.
I feel like, should we end it with the lightning round? You do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here comes the lightning round. First question is, what video game were you playing in your dorm room that night?
NHL 94.
Okay. On what system? Is that the Super Nintendo?
No. That was on the Sega Genesis.
Okay, big time. What is your favorite video game of all time?
Halo.
Probably
Halo 2.
On the Xbox?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Big Master Chief fan?
I do. Big fan.
Okay.
New one coming out. I've pled for it for for Christmas.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. All right. So duly noted. Let's video game. Favorite sport to watch?
Oh, by the way, there's one video game that I
please.
did used to play called Destroy All Humans.
With the aliens?
With the aliens, suck the brains out of all the people. Oh, it was so much fun.
It's a classic one.
I really liked that one.
Just a video game, people.
Yeah.
Favorite sports team to watch?
Oh, dear, Arsenal. Yeah.
Okay, so favorite
Arsenal,
sport to watch then would be soccer or football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Without a doubt, it's Arsenal.
Okay.
Yeah, they rip my heart out repeatedly. I cheer for teams that have that habit. Like all you Bears fans.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah, the Bears fans get there. Oh, really? You're a Packers fan? Yeah,
no,
you know.
Shot, I'm not a Packers fan.
You know all about it.
I'm a Cowboys fan.
You know all about it.
I know all about it. All about it. What is your favorite food to eat?
Oh,
if you could eat anything,
pizza.
Really?
Yeah.
Deep dish?
Yeah.
Really?
Sure.
Okay, and then what is...
Nope, other pizza too. Yep.
Okay, so no matter what style?
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
As long as it doesn't have the weird broccoli and cauliflower on it, I'm in.
Anchovies. What is your favorite Chicago pizza place?
Well, so I like Lou Malnati's better than Giordano's.
Okay. Same.
But I went to this place called Giorgio's a week or so ago.
Yeah.
Right? And I loved it.
It's good.
Like I really, really loved it. Their thin crust is unreal.
Yeah.
I loved it. Anyway.
Yeah. There's so many more too that
I still have several to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the big draws here.
Yeah.
My wife is not a big fan of the Italian beef though.
Okay. That's tough because that's one of the
she
staples.
Thinks that she doesn't understand like the soggy bread thing.
The au jus.
She's like, why does it have to have the soggy bread?
Why? Just you could get it without.
No, I don't know if you can.
I think there's some places that'll help you with that.
All right.
Maybe it'll be a better experience. Who knows? What's your favorite thing about Chicago so far?
Well, I'm supposed to say the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it?
I feel like moving to the suburbs of a major city is in many ways returning back to where I'm from. That's where I grew up.
Yeah,
and so I've really, really enjoyed the access to a major city, the suburban life, the neighborhoods, all of that.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been great.
It's
I
like
really love Chicago. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. It's a bit of a full circle.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I'm drawing blanks now. Sorry, that might not have been a super fast lightning round.
It was pretty good.
It was all right?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for being here and having a conversation and sharing your story.
My pleasure.
Thank you all for watching and listening, and we'll see you in season 2.
Yeah, I hope you had a Merry Christmas.
Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.